Welcome, Psych250 students, to Chapter 1, Abnormal Psychology. In Chapter 1, we're going to cover what else? Abnormal behavior. How apropos. So I've got a couple pieces of art here. Do people hate us because we dress this way, or do we dress this way because people hate us? This is a good spin on what exactly is abnormal behavior, right? How do we find the answer? Well, you can go to your astrologist, your guru, your psychiatrist. A lot of people have different answers as to what the solution is, or whether something is abnormal or not. Here we see that behavior is very situational. For example, we have some people attending a nude beach, while other people are stripped of all pretense. So they're just speaking the truth. So let's dig a little bit more carefully into what exactly is abnormal. The first step is, does it deviate from the social norms, what we consider it to be the most common type of behavior in society? Now, there's a lot of behavior that we do deviates from the social norms, as you know. Is it maladaptive? Is there something about it that does not progress the person in a positive way? Is it self-destructive? Now, people drinking excessive amounts of coffee might be labeled self-destructive, but most of us would say, well, that's how I get through the day. Does it cause discomfort for others? Now, that's a tricky one because you can just wake up in the morning and walk down the street, and some people may not like the way you look, and that could cause discomfort for others. So it gets a little hazy, a lot of gray area. It's not cut and dry as we'd like it to be. But most people say, I know abnormal behavior when I see it. Let's take a look at this individual right here. This is Shaky Jake. It takes me back to my college days in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now, I don't know if Shaky Jake is really his name or not, but I just know that on a hot summer day or on a cold winter day, Shaky Jake would be on the streets of Ann Arbor, Michigan, listening to music, wearing this huge fur coat, sunglasses, and a hat. It didn't matter if it was 20 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. He was always on this corner listening to music and shaking. Now, does he meet the criteria? Well, what he's doing is unusual. It goes against the cultural norms. Is it maladaptive? Well, I wouldn't like to be in a fur coat when it's 100 degrees outside. Is it causing discomfort to others? Some people might prefer his music, some people may not. You can see my point. It gets a little bit hazy. But the one thing I noticed was I never saw Shaky Jake asking for money. He didn't seem to bother anybody. If anything, he produced happiness because some people would dance along with him. But we're more interested in Psych 250 and psychopathology, right? Those things that interfere with one's abilities to function. So when you start to get the sense that work isn't going too well, school isn't going too well, family issues aren't going too well, relationship issues aren't going too well, you might ask yourself, what is going on here? Why is my mood, why are my circumstances starting to interfere with things that I want to go well? Thus we turn to the book, the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, Mental Disorders, published by the American Psychiatric Association. Now this book, which I all recommend that you get a copy of, You might want to get a used copy before the new version comes out. This book here, let me grab it from my shelf. This is the book. And if you look inside the book, and you can find these at bookstores and you can order them, I would, like I said, get a used copy or maybe even a paperback version so it's a little bit less expensive. You'll see that it's filled with disorder after disorder after disorder. This book is an agreement by psychologists, psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, counselors, counseling ministers, a variety of people in the mental health profession who've come together and said, this is what a disorder looks like. Here are the criteria a person minimally must meet to get this disorder, and some recommendations for treatment. Not all disorders get in there because, as we find over the years, we change our views on certain disorders, and there's obviously a lot of politics involved as to what gets in and what does not get in. So you've got the disorder, and what do you do with it? Well, you need to go seek help. And you can go to a licensed psychologist and make sure the person is licensed in the state that you're seeking them out, and everything from a clinical psychologist, which those individuals typically have PhDs or PsyDs. You can go see a psychiatrist, which typically has a MD or a DO. There's a wide variety of clinicians you can see. I think what's most important, not necessarily is degree, but also the expertise, the experience, right? Psychiatric nurses, counselors, and so forth. Here in the state of California, we have marriage and family therapists who typically are master's level individuals. The important thing is getting somebody who knows about your issues that can offer some help. So I'd like to propose a case study. The name of the case study is Devil on the Wall. And here I've drawn a little rendition of the story so you can get a better sense of the story. It takes place in my hometown, which is Detroit, Michigan. And it takes place with a woman who's in her 50s, Latina. She has several kids. Her sons growing up were always in trouble. She would stay up way into the late hours worrying about them, wondering if they're going to come home, if she's going to get a call from the police, thinking the worst. And sometimes, most times, they did come home eventually. Sometimes they got in trouble. Well, staying up overnight with all that worrying, she would wake up periodically anytime she'd hear a noise, thinking it might be one of her sons coming home. And one particular night, early in the morning, she walks into the bathroom. And keep in mind, this is a very religious woman. She worked at the local church. She went to Mass, I believe, 7 days a week. She walks into her bathroom in the middle of the morning. She sees the devil on the wall. And of course, her first reaction is horror, and she begins to pray and scream. And her family wakes up startled because they hear her screaming. They come into the bathroom, and she's inconsolable. But they calm her down, they turn on all the lights, and she explains to them that she saw the devil on the wall. And they look with the lights on, and they don't see anything. So they try turning the lights off, thinking, well, maybe that's the way she saw it, so maybe they can see it with the lights off, and they don't see anything. Now, my question to you, is this woman mentally ill? You could argue, well, from your knowledge base, hallucinations, visual situations that other people cannot perceive, phenomena, that's a sign of mental illness. But then you consider some of the other factors involved with the case, right? Think about that. Your mental health professional meets with you, gets as much information as possible, and develops a treatment plan. And that treatment plan is to ensure that you get better as soon as possible. Many therapists will attempt to understand the etiology. The etiology refers to when did it start? What were some of the contributing factors? Now, some people say, you know what? I've always been this way. Or after this incident, that's when things started happening. Knowing the origin sometimes can help. Of course, getting to change behaviors, that's what we're all about, right? In certain situations, we're asked as clinicians to make predictions, and that's very difficult. If we could predict everybody's behavior, why would we need clinicians, right? So in some cases, we have to do civil commitments. We have to hospitalize people, sometimes against their will, because they're a danger to themselves or to others. Now, we're going back to the Shaky J case. He didn't seem to be a danger to himself or others, besides the fact that he probably sweated a lot during the summertime. Going back to Devil on the Wall, she didn't seem to want to harm herself or harm others. She was obviously upset that she saw the devil on her wall. Nobody wants usually to see the devil. So we have to consider what are some of the cultural variables. In both of those cases, what's the story of Shaky Jake? What's the story of this woman? Why does she manifest the devil on the wall? Or was it really there? Looking at things in their context is so important. Gathering as much information as possible before you come up with that diagnosis, before you come up with that treatment plan is essential. Now, if we look at the history of individuals, some people looked, like Thomas Szasz, for example, looked at our society and says, you know what, there's really no such thing as mental illness. We just haven't figured out what category to put people in, so we label them. Now, folks who've had somebody mentally ill in their family may disagree with that. Say, no. This person really needs help because they are struggling, right? How prevalent are mental illnesses? Quite prevalent, right? Many people do suffer from a wide range of, from moderate to severe mental illness, bouts of mental illness, right? There's a case I heard recently of a woman sort of dismantling a shelf of masks at a department store, and she said it was her mental illness that led to her to behave in that, and for people to have some empathy, right? What are the implications for society? Huge costs, right? Some mentally ill people are incarcerated for the behaviors, and of course, incarceration is more expensive than education, and people can't get to work. A variety of different circumstances. So what we want to focus on, of course, is prevention, if we can. That's a very complicated situation because there's a lot of stigma and stereotypes connected with this notion of being mentally ill. Even on college campuses, when you get educated people, sometimes they joke and gesture, but some people take them seriously about what it's like to be mentally ill. For example, there was a tour given at our campus psychological services, and the person giving the tour said, "This is where the crazy people go." Now, joke, of course, but you can imagine how that reinforces the stereotype. Fortunately, we have organizations that get out the good word and try to promote mental health, not mental illness. And we'll talk about that next video. Thank you.